Welcome to our deep dive into the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Oh, Stephen Covey's classic.
It really is. We've got a ton of sources to unpack for this one, excerpts from the book itself.
Nice.
Yeah, and forwards by some really influential figures,
Huh.
even stories from Covey's children,
Wow.
and examples of how these habits have been used in like all sorts of fields, business,
Mm.
parenting, you name it. Should be fascinating.
It really shows you the book's staying power. 25 years on,
Right.
and people are still finding these habits relevant, even those leading massive companies.
Absolutely. So our mission today, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
is to give you a solid understanding of each of these habits, not just what they are on the surface,
Yeah.
but the deeper principles behind them and how they all connect to create this upward spiral of growth.
Towards interdependence.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll also try to pull out some of the less obvious takeaways, those aha moments.
I love those. Okay, so let's start with the foundation of it all, paradigms. Covey uses that classic optical illusion, the one where you can see either like a young woman or an old woman.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's mind-bending because it shows how two people can look at the exact same thing
Yeah.
and see completely different realities. What jumps out at you about that in terms of like personal effectiveness?
Well, it highlights how our perceptions shape our reality, right?
Mhm.
We often kind of operate on autopilot, viewing the world through these preconceived notions, assumptions.
We all do it.
But real change, the kind that leads to lasting effectiveness, starts with a shift in our paradigms,
Yeah.
how we see ourselves in the world.
That's so true. It's like when you suddenly grasp a concept you've been wrestling with for ages,
Yeah, tell me about it.
everything clicks into place. And Covey argues that this paradigm shift is crucial
Yeah.
for moving from what he calls the personality ethic
Okay.
to the character ethic. What's the main difference between those two?
So the personality ethic focuses on appearances, techniques,
Got it.
those quick fix solutions, promising to make you more charming or successful
Sure.
without actually addressing your underlying character. And Covey's pretty blunt about it.
Yeah, yeah.
He says these techniques might work for a bit,
Okay.
but in the long run, they fail.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone, right?
Exactly. You might cover it up for a while,
Right.
but it doesn't actually heal the injury.
Not even close.
He contrasts that with the character ethic, which is all about those foundational principles.
Like what?
Integrity, honesty, fairness, courage, respect.
Mm-hmm.
These principles form the bedrock of true effectiveness.
The kind that lasts, yeah.
Exactly.
And he uses that story about his son struggling in baseball
I remember that.
to really bring this to life. Instead of focusing on superficial techniques to make him a better player, Covey realizes he needs to help his son develop his character. Those inner qualities, that'll actually lead to lasting success both on and off the field.
It's a powerful lesson for anyone, really.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the first habit, be proactive. I feel like this gets thrown around a lot these days.
It does.
But Covey digs deeper, doesn't he?
He does. It's more than just taking initiative.
Right.
He defines proactivity as recognizing our power to choose our response, regardless of the situation.
Oh, I like that.
It's about acknowledging that we're not just reacting to external forces, but we can actually choose our attitude, our actions, even in tough situations.
He even uses Viktor Frankl's experience in Nazi death camps
Wow. Powerful example.
to illustrate this. Frankl, despite going through unimaginable suffering, he still found a way to choose his response, to find meaning even in the midst of that horror.
It really shows the resilience of the human spirit, the power of choice.
It really does. And on a more practical level, Covey gives us this tool for cultivating proactivity with those circles.
Oh yeah, the circle of concern and the circle of influence.
Those are the ones.
So the circle of concern, that's everything that worries you. Global events, personal problems, it's that swirling vortex of anxiety.
Oh, I know that vortex well.
And the circle of influence, that's the sweet spot.
Okay.
It's the things you can actually control, your choices, actions, your attitude. Proactive people focus their energy on that circle, on making a difference where they actually can.
So easy to get caught up in that circle of concern, though, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
The news, social media, even our own thoughts can keep us stuck in worry.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But Covey gives us some advice on how to shift our focus.
Okay. How?
He says, start by identifying a problem in your circle of concern.
So let's say I'm stressing about a big presentation at work, keeping me up at night.
Okay, good example. Now ask yourself, what parts of this can I actually control? Maybe it's how much you prep, the way you structure it, or even just your mindset going in.
Yeah, those are things I can influence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of dwelling on stuff you can't control, like how the audience will react,
Yeah.
you focus your energy on the elements you can actually shape.
This has already made me rethink how I deal with challenges.
Good. It's a powerful shift.
And we're just getting started. What's next on our path towards effectiveness?
Well, habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. And this is where we get strategic, about crafting the life we want.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. So habit 2, begin with the end in mind. This is about creating that mental blueprint for our lives, aligning our actions with our values, our vision for ourselves.
Okay, so this is more than just like setting goals, right?
Way more.
How does Covey explain this one?
He uses the example of building a house. You wouldn't start hammering nails without a clear plan, would you?
You'd end up with a disaster.
Exactly. Same with our lives.
Yeah.
If we don't have a clear vision of what we want to create, we end up reacting to everything, living by other people's agendas instead of our own.
And he really hammers this home, pardon the pun,
Wow.
with that story about a man on his deathbed, reflecting on his life and realizing he achieved all this outward success.
Right. But totally neglected the things that actually mattered to him.
It's a wake-up call, for sure. To live with the end in mind. Not necessarily the end of our lives,
Right.
but the end goal we're working towards.
So defining what success really means to you.
Yes. What do you want your legacy to be? What impact do you want to have? What kind of person do you want to be?
Big questions. But I'm guessing Covey provides some tools for tackling those.
He does. He suggests writing a personal mission statement. It's like your personal constitution, a guiding document to help you make decisions and stay on course.
I love that, having that clear sense of direction, a North Star.
Exactly. And it's not just about those goals, but aligning your actions with your values, your aspirations.
Okay, starting to see how this all fits together.
Wow.
So shift our paradigms, define our end goal. Then what? How do we actually make it happen?
That's where habit 3 comes in. Put first things first. This is where we get into Covey's famous time management matrix.
Oh yeah, the 4 quadrants.
That's the one, categorizing tasks by urgency and importance. I've seen that before. It's all about prioritizing.
Exactly. Covey says we should be focusing on those quadrant 2 activities.
Okay. Remind me, what are those again?
The things that are important but not urgent.
Those are the ones that always seem to get pushed aside, though, right?
They do. We get caught up in the urgent stuff, the things screaming for our attention.
Firefighting.
But those quadrant 2 activities, those are the ones that contribute to our long-term goals, our well-being. Things like planning, relationship building.
Personal development.
Exactly.
It's about playing the long game, right?
Absolutely. It's investing in the things that will ultimately bring you greater effectiveness and fulfillment.
Love it.
And he gives us some strategies for putting this into practice, like actually scheduling those quadrant 2 activities.
Yeah.
Learning to say no to good things.
So you can say yes to the best things.
Yes. And focusing on effectiveness, not just efficiency.
Being intentional with our time and energy. Making sure our actions align with our priorities.
Exactly. And this leads us to a critical point, interdependence. Covey talks about his maturity continuum moving from dependence to independence to interdependence.
So it's about recognizing we can't do it all alone.
It's more than that. He argues that true interdependence, the ability to collaborate to build those win-win solutions, it requires the foundation of those first 3 habits, the private victories.
Ah, so you can't really build strong relationships if you haven't mastered yourself first. You need that solid foundation.
Exactly. Think about the areas of your life where you're most interdependent. Family, work, your community. What challenges and opportunities come with that? How can those first 3 habits help you navigate those relationships better?
Those are great questions. Makes me think about how I often approach relationships with that sense of dependence, needing others to validate me or fix my problems.
It's human nature. But Covey pushes us to move towards independence, taking responsibility.
And then from there, into interdependence, recognizing we can achieve so much more together.
That's the beauty of it. It's finding that balance. Being self-reliant, but also seeing the power of connection.
I love that progression. Okay, so now we're moving into those public victories, those habits that focus on building those effective relationships.
Right. Starting with habit 4, think win-win. Sounds pretty straightforward.
It does.
But Covey takes it beyond just being nice or seeking compromise.
He introduces it as a paradigm, a way of thinking that seeks those mutually beneficial solutions.
Right. He contrasts it with those other less effective paradigms, win-lose, wins, lose-lose.
And he tells that story about a software company president who walked away from a massive contract.
Oh yeah, $84,000.
Because it didn't align with his win-win principles.
And in the long run,
It paid off.
it did. The company built this reputation for integrity, for fairness, and it actually led to even bigger deals down the road.
It's a great example of how win-win isn't about sacrificing your own needs or being a pushover.
Right. It's about finding creative solutions that work for everyone involved.
Playing the long game, building trust, which ultimately leads to greater success for everybody.
Absolutely. So how do we cultivate this win-win mindset?
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in that competitive mindset.
It is. Covey says we need to start by shifting our perspective, seeing every interaction as an opportunity to create value for both parties.
So instead of going into a negotiation thinking, I need to win, even if it means the other person loses,
Right.
it's more like, how can we both come out of this feeling good?
Exactly. It takes empathy,
Yeah,
creativity,
right.
and a willingness to collaborate.
He also talks about abundance mentality.
It does. The belief that there's enough for everyone.
Because when we're stuck in that scarcity mindset, we see everything as a competition.
But when we embrace abundance,
We open ourselves to possibilities,
and
collaboration.
we recognize that everyone can win.
Such a powerful shift. Moving away from that fear-based us versus them mentality
Yeah.
and embracing a more cooperative approach. Like, we're all in this together.
Which brings us to habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This one's all about communication, a very specific kind, empathic listening.
Okay, so not just hearing the words, but actually getting where the other person is coming from.
Yes, Covey says it's about understanding their point of view before even trying to make ourselves understood.
He uses the example of a dad trying to connect with his teenage son, right?
Yeah, and the dad keeps interrupting with advice, solutions, but it just pushes the son further away.
We've all been there.
Classic example of how our usual communication patterns, probing, evaluating,
Advising.
can actually shut down communication instead of fostering understanding.
We're so eager to jump in with our own thoughts, we forget to really listen.
Right. Covey suggests a different approach, reflecting back the speaker's feelings, their meaning.
So, paraphrasing what they said, making sure we really get it.
Exactly. And then we offer our own perspective.
Makes the other person feel heard, which is so important.
And when we create that space for understanding,
That's when real connection happens.
and that's when we can start to build towards synergy, that creative force where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Which brings us to habit 6,
Synergize.
synergize.
This one always felt a bit abstract to me.
It can.
Yeah.
So synergy is about recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's about valuing those differences, working together to create something new, something better than any one person could do alone.
He uses that example of a classroom transforming, right? From competition to collaboration and creativity.
Yes, to show how powerful synergy can be.
He even tells a story about leading an executive team where they kind of ditch the agenda and through this open communication,
Through
they end up creating something way more effective than they planned.
It just shows what can happen when you embrace those different perspectives, create that safe space for people to share.
So it's not about everyone agreeing, it's about valuing those differences and integrating them.
Exactly. And Covey says synergy requires a high level of internal security, the courage to be vulnerable, to listen, and to value those different perspectives,
It's about letting go a little bit.
and trusting the process.
That's a tough one, but the payoff can be incredible.
Covey says synergy is the key to solving those tough problems, to creating innovative solutions and building truly effective teams.
And now I see how these habits all connect. Each one builds on the last, creating this like upward spiral of growth.
Towards greater effectiveness and interdependence.
And that brings us to the final habit. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. Renewal.
Renewal.
I love that analogy. It's about taking care of ourselves so we can keep going.
Exactly. Covey breaks it down into those 4 key dimensions.
Yeah.
Physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional.
He says we should devote at least an hour each day to activities that renew us in each area.
He calls it the daily private victory.
I love that because it's so true. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Right. You need to take care of yourself to be able to take care of others and really contribute to the world.
He He even talks about the importance of laughter in play.
which often gets overlooked, especially as adults.
But it's so essential.
It is. It's about finding that balance,
Mm-hmm.
pushing ourselves, but also taking time to recharge.
And he ties this back to all the other habits, saying that sharpening the saw is the foundation for living a truly effective life.
It's like he's saying it's not just about self-care, it's about creating that upward spiral of growth,
Yeah.
allowing us to continually improve.
In all areas of our lives. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Paradigms, principles, habits.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. It really is. But it all comes down to taking care of ourselves, our most valuable tool.
Without it, the other habits just won't stick.
And he gives really practical advice.
He does, like scheduling that renewal time, finding what truly recharges you.
Even embracing laughter in play.
Right. Who knew that was part of being effective?
Seriously. But I do have a question. Where do those principles actually fit into all of this? Like, how do you even identify them? Covey keeps mentioning them.
Yeah, it can feel kind of big and vague.
It does.
So, he encourages us to create a personal mission statement, like a constitution for our lives, to get clarity on those core values, purpose, your vision for the life you want. He calls it taking ownership of your first creation.
It's like being the architect of your own life. But doesn't that sound a little self-centered, like it's all about me and my goals?
He talks about that. He says true effectiveness isn't just about external achievements. It's about aligning those goals with your values, with your principles.
Right, it's not just what you do, but who you are, how you show up.
Exactly. Living with integrity, authenticity.
And he brings this to life with that story about his son struggling in baseball.
Oh, right.
At first, he focused on performance, technique,
Yeah.
but that wasn't really aligned with his values, so he shifted his focus to building his son's character.
Helping him develop those inner qualities, perseverance, sportsmanship.
And it wasn't about winning or losing.
It was about becoming the best version of himself.
And Covey applies this to organizations, too. He says for businesses to truly thrive, they need that shared set of values.
Guiding their decision.
So it's not just about profits. It's about creating a culture of trust, respect.
Where employees feel valued, empowered.
He gives that example of a hotel with amazing service.
Right.
And the secret was their mission statement.
Created by everyone.
All the employees.
Yeah.
From housekeepers to managers, everyone was on the same page.
And it showed.
But, I mean, let's be real. Nobody's perfect at living these habits all the time.
No, definitely not. Covey admits that. He says it's a journey, not a destination. He talks about his own struggles, how the closer you get to mastering these habits, the more you realize how much further you have to go.
It's about continuous improvement.
Exactly. He says embrace the process. See mistakes as opportunities.
Seek feedback. Be accountable. Strive to do better each day.
That's the key.
It's inspiring and a little overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a lot. But where do we even start?
Well, Covey leaves us with this challenge. She asks us to pick one habit
Just one.
to focus on this week.
And use it to make a positive difference.
So there you have it, our deep dive into Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
A book that challenges us to think differently.
To align our actions with our values.
And to embrace interdependence.
And continuous improvement.
It's a roadmap for navigating life with purpose and resilience.
We hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of these principles and inspired you to actually use them in your own life.
So what habit will you choose to focus on this week? How will you use it to create change? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep diving deep.